Welcome to Fintech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of fintech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Pål and Ville. This is Fintech Daydreaming.
Hello dear listeners, and welcome back to what is going to be the last episode of season 10 of Fintech Daydreaming. It is Christmas, it's just around the corner. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, we hope you have a fantastic time. For those of you that don't celebrate Christmas, we hope you have a fantastic time. I'm Pål. I am going to be your host for this final episode of season 10, but as always, I can't do this without my buddy here, Ville. So Ville, how are you?
I'm good. I'm also funny how we're struggling always to say Happy Christmas these days. We always have to say Happy Holidays or something like this. Literally, like every call I had at work today, I had the same exact conversation. Should we say Christmas or not? But anyway, we're here. Happy Holidays, everybody. And we are all set for this final episode of season 10.
We are indeed. And in this makeshift, very quickly thrown together studio, you will notice we are yet again in a different place. It doesn't have fancy Nordea logos and Fintech Daydreaming logos behind us, but we are cozy.
Yeah.
We have a beer to say Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
I know for you watching this, might be in the morning, but it's evening for us whilst we record this, so we're entitled to cheer in the festive season with a quick beer. So
yeah. Cheers.
as I say here, kippis and hyvä joulua.
Hyvä joulua.
Yes. But all that aside, why don't we take a quick review of season 10?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tradition, right?
It is.
So
It is. And wow, season 10.
yeah.
10, we're into double figures, dude.
Yeah, indeed. It's crazy. I can't believe it. And again, 10 seasons is forever. 5 years. 5 years.
5
yeah.
years. And they say actually most podcasts that get started don't make it through the first season.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And we also see podcasts that go maybe 2-3 seasons and then they kind of fade out quickly, or they start to fade out. They have lesser episodes coming through and then they kind of disappear. I think if we're ever going out, we're going out in a definite date, so we're not going to fade out. I think that's the
Big bang.
So big bang, we're going to do like a final episode or something like that. But luckily, that is not in the horizon. We're going to be continuing this for several seasons, for sure.
Absolutely we are. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what do you see as being the core elements that have kept us going? Why haven't we given up? Why haven't we failed? How have we managed to get to season 10? I've got some thinking and ideas, but I'd love to hear yours first.
I'd love to say low expectations.
Yeah.
That helps.
Mm.
But also the number one thing that comes to mind is the direct feedback we get from our listeners. Again, we are still a fairly small audience compared to global podcasts and things like this, but whenever we go to conferences, we go to different places, people always come up and say, hey, I love your podcast. And sometimes they come, hey, I listened to your last episode, maybe a few pointers to you or something like this. All of that is very much respected, and again, we want that feedback. But yeah, I think it's really the response we get from people on doing this. That's always nice. And then to my surprise, some of the feedback that we get is also related to the fact that apparently there's not too many podcasts that is like conversational yet topical. So if you are working in fintech or banking, a lot of the podcasts are very, let's say, news oriented, or they're very, very person oriented. We're more like a conversation club. So I heard a feedback that some people say that I just love to go for a walk and listen to you guys talk because you're so soothing to me. So again, feedback like that keeps us going.
It helps me to fall asleep every Monday night. Yes.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but at least I'm sleeping. So.
I also think another element to it is the fact that we set off on this journey not with a monetization agenda. We always set off on this as a it's our passion. We enjoy it. We want to share some of our thinking. We want to spend time with people we admire and in the industry. And we've continued that way. I mean, I get an awful lot of people, and I know you do as well, that will contact us saying, oh, we can help you to grow your listener base, and we can help you with monetization strategies and everything else. And I always say, no, we don't need it. We're not looking to monetize this. It's not a business. It's being done because we have a passion for what we're doing and what we're talking about. And from that perspective, it makes it very easy to continue.
That's true.
There's no KPIs there that are saying should we or shouldn't we. It's just, this is fun. This is great. Let's do it. Let's continue.
I mean, we've seen many great podcasts being shut down basically because they run out of money. So what they do is they build up this fairly expensive production machinery. People they need to pay salaries to, publishing, editing, all these things, and they run out of money or sponsors, and they just have to stop. And again, we don't have that problem because again, thanks to your production capabilities, I mean, we don't do too much editing, but the things we do, we have been able to do in a very efficient way as well. So yeah, I think.
And a hint to all you buddying podcasters out there that are thinking about starting, it's amazing how much you can get done with yourself, your friends, your loved ones, and special girlfriends. They always help. They're fantastic in these things. So yes, but we need to have a joke. Okay. I mean, we cannot have an episode without a joke. I've got a joke.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a joke.
Well,
I mean, it's the end of the season. Let's see who's got the worst joke.
Yeah, sure. So I think I've been teasing this joke a few times in the previous episodes.
Yes.
So I said I've had a joke in reserve, but luckily we had great guests who always had their jokes, so I couldn't use this joke. But yeah, I have a joke. You ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. Why did the banker give up on decentralized finance?
I have no idea.
It was too DeFi cult.
I'm glad that one actually was kept in reserve and never came out, but now it's out. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll beat you.
Okay.
Yeah. Where do snowmen keep their money?
Not in a riverbank, so it has to be something Christmas related. Tell me.
What? A snowbank?
Oh,
Come on!
so close. So close. All right. Yeah. So
I think
yeah,
I win. I think I win.
That was worse, yeah.
We'll take feedback on that. Who had the worst joke?
Yeah.
And I think the worst joke gets a box of chocolates from the best joke.
Okay. There we go.
I think that's the way to do it. But
so up to you, listeners.
Yeah.
There we go.
So let's go through the season. I mean, what to you has been the highlight episode?
So many. So we have.
You have to pick one.
So we, as you know, we do every other episode is a fintech news episode. We do with a fintech farm
Yes.
from Helsinki and Janne. So those were always topical, to the point, and we wanted to talk about those specific news. All of them were really fun. But of course, I have to pick my favorite episode from the guests that we've had,
Yes.
because again, you get an interesting color into the conversation. And again, this is probably a fairly easy guess for you as well, but the most high-profile guest that we've ever had on the podcast, the former Prime Minister of Finland, Jyrki Katainen, was the last episode we recorded before this. I was very nervous going into that episode because again, he is a seasoned veteran, been a prime minister, been all over the international politics, just fantastically articulate guests. So I was nervous, not because it would have been kind of starstruck or anything like that. I was nervous because he's so experienced. Sometimes those guests are fairly dry. And to a certain extent, you saw maybe that in the beginning of the episode as well. But as we moved along in the episode, it was started to get more into the usual fintech daydreaming groove in terms of kind of casual conversation feeling that we always want to strive for. And yeah, overall, that was my highlight for these two reasons. Again, high-profile guest with a lot of expectation, and then being able to still do it in the way that we like to do conversations. So that's got to be my pick for this season.
I've got to admit, I've had feedback that said the structure of the discussion was fantastically good. It had a fantastic flow to it. It sort of built on itself as we went through the episode and the discussion. So I agree with you. It was a fantastic experience. Obviously, having someone of that profile on the show is outstanding, and just like you, a little bit nerve-wracking. I mean, we got the professional studio and everything else. It was fantastic. So yes, he was the highest profile that we had. Very good discussion. I also enjoyed the discussion with Chris Skinner coming back and talking with us. Slightly different profile. I think he's a little bit more of the, he will tug on chains and ruffle some feathers. His view on, decentralized finance, the future of money, etc. I think very interesting. His new book being really good. So I thought that as well was a fantastically good discussion.
It was a great way to start the season. I mean, obviously we had the news episode before that, but it was the first guest that we had on the season. And it's always good to start with a high profile guest like Chris. Chris has been with us a few times now, and every time he brings something interesting, sometimes related to a new book like this time, but sometimes just having interesting points of view. He's also so seasoned, so senior in the scene that he can ruffle feathers. He can basically just come and say whatever he thinks, and many times he's absolutely right. This time he was talking about what he called hybrid finance. Yeah. So that's an interesting way of saying that maybe there's something in decentralized finance, cult or not, that the traditional finance, even though I hate the term, can maybe learn. So again, his point about combining the best parts of both in hybrid finance, I think that was an interesting way to frame the conversation. So yeah, again, good episode.
I think my main takeaway from that whole discussion was his phrase that he repeated multiple times: money does need to be governed, but it doesn't necessarily need to be governed by government. Which, interesting thought to take away. I still, particularly in emerged markets like we are in, I think the government has a very strong role, and the central bank has a strong role, and everything else. Yeah. But there are parts of the world where maybe that rings true. But again, Chris wants to ruffle some feathers, and I think we need more of that in the industry. I think we very often are just sitting on our laurels, and we're not embracing change enough sometimes.
Yeah, and again, we don't always need to agree with our guests. I don't actually agree with Chris on a lot of those things, especially related to governments. But yeah, again, that's why we have these guests, to have good conversations.
Yes. And then obviously in between each of the guests, we had our usual with Jana talking about the Nordic fintech highlights. An awful lot of those. I don't think it's any value of us to go through every single one of those episodes now. There was so much news that's happened.
Yeah.
I think we've seen some general trends as far as fintech has been concerned this year in the Nordics. We saw an interesting growth at the beginning around funding. Funding went up, then it started going down, or should we say normalized at some point.
Yeah.
What other trends in general sort of caught your eye if we look at it from a holistic view across the year?
Yeah, I think if you listen to the Nordic Fintech Highlights episodes, there are a couple of common topics that keep on coming up on this. And number one there is really the role of central banks' money and cash in the society. I mean, I at least picked a couple of stories during this season that were related to that. Also partly because I work with those things on my day-to-day basis. But I think it's a really interesting time because we see not only central bank digital currencies evolving in the market, but we see the market infrastructure preparing to be more resilient, have better self-sovereignty in a way, and we see some kind of regions coming together, European Union being the one that we are mostly related to, when it comes to resilience and payment sovereignty. And this has triggered a lot of initiatives in the market. There's a lot of new regulation coming through, not only CBDCs like the digital euro, but we also have other things related to that. So we had a lot of stories around that. Yeah. Second one was the evolution of the ecosystem also on the private side of payments. So again, there's been a lot of discussion about Apple being forced to open up the NFC payments on the iPhone. So we had a few stories around that as well, and that seems to be a topic that keeps on giving, and I'm sure we're going to return to those next season as well. Those were my main kind of takeaways.
Two other trends that I noted sort of generally across the year. There's a growing focus on financial literacy and financial well-being, not necessarily by the banks themselves, but also by fintechs and other, being fintechs highlights. There's a lot of fintechs that are taking a lot of view on how do we help the general Joe or Joette on the street with their money in these times of uncertainty. And we've seen a number of the banks sort of engaging in that journey, and I think that's one of the underlying things that I've seen for this year, which I think is very positive. The other one is we're starting to see a growth in the Nordics around embedded finance. And that's another one which I think is going to continue to grow next year and be very interesting. And we actually had the next episode after that was with Yanni talking about embedded finance,
yes,
which was another interesting discussion, because I think embedded finance, if we connect it to open banking, PSD2, it's been around for some time, but it's been very slow in movement in the Nordics, and it's almost like a hockey stick. We're starting to see this now, Airpassi, we're seeing Elisa Bank getting very, very focused on embedded finance, banking as a service, particularly in the SME space. I think in the Nordics, we're going to see an explosion of embedded finance capabilities in the SME space, small and medium market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting connection between open banking and embedded finance, something we also discussed with Yanni, because I think he said that the embedded finance is an evolution of open banking, and I think both of you and me disagree on that point. Again, we like to disagree with our guests all the time, but to me, it really is about moving from selling APIs through developer portals like we see in some of the Nordic banks, for example, and then onboarding customers or users of those APIs using certain processes. It really is about, well, how do we then push our services as banks to the context of other platforms?
Yes.
So again, that's the definition of embedded finance, that you are there where the customers are. You're not asking the customers to come to you. So I think that switch in mindset and building that capability, that sales and push capability instead of pull, is in the core of embedded finance. And that actually requires new type of risk management, new type of kind of digital supply chain management and partnership management. And I think this discussion is very much getting started as we see, even though people think it's already becoming like a past topic, but I don't think so. I don't think we're even close.
It's a shift in business model and a shift in thinking that's required at the top level in banks. And I think the arrogance of the banks need to shift a little bit to become a little bit better at understanding the world is changing, and it's no longer about bringing the customers to the branches and those sort of things. So I agree with you. Yes,
we had a great conversation with Yanni about that, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this in the next season many times.
Yes, and next episode after that, going back to financial literacy and helping the general citizen in being better with their money, particularly the younger generation, was with Elizabeth. I mean, that was a fantastic discussion around the work that they're doing, specifically focused on helping the gender gap in financial management, financial literacy, and empowering females to become much better at managing their finances.
Yeah.
Something that, I think you and we've seen repeatedly in places that it is needed. Yeah,
absolutely. That was actually the contender for my favorite episode of this season, between Jyrki and Elizabeth, because again, it's not often, especially when you work in financial inclusion. I've worked in emerging markets for a long time, and banking the unbanked or providing financial services for the underbanked. You tend to think that you have it covered. Then you come home. I've live and born in Finland, and you imagine that things like gender equality is already a kind of a sore topic, and that is far from truth. And she brought great data to support that discussion, and even better, working on an actual solution for trying to at least help progress in that topic. And yeah, a really eye-opening episode. I really enjoyed the conversation.
No, I agree. And I think the one thing that scared me out of that discussion was she highlighted, based on her data, it was something like another 3 generations before that gender gap is closed.
Yep.
I mean, we keep talking about the gender gap in salary, in pay, women being paid less than men. And I think that's generally sorted itself out in the Nordics. But this whole notion that there is still a gender equality when it comes to just understanding how to deal with money, how to manage money, particularly around the big decisions, to me was an eye-opener. I did not comprehend and understand or appreciate that difference.
Yeah. So again, my other favorite episode of this season for sure.
Yes. And then we had Eva-Lotta join us to dive down into compliance and regulations, something we've skirted around for 10 seasons now, right?
Yeah.
We finally got into the quagmire on that.
So let's bring on a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of legalese and don't hold me accountable for any of the questions and answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
It was the answers were very concise and to the point. To a point where it became also a little bit difficult to carry on the conversation. You might have noticed that if you listen to the episode. But even that being said, whenever you talk to lawyers about regulation, that's exactly how the conversation goes. And that's the way it's, that was a good episode for you to learn how discussions with lawyers many times go. So again, it was a different episode for sure. And I think a lot of people, especially in the fintech space, perhaps even learned something about on how to handle compliance and regulation.
Oh, I learned an awful lot. I would feel like after 30 years working in this industry as a consultant, I had a good grasp of everything, but we always learn something new on every episode. And I think I learned quite a lot on that one. So.
Yeah. And again, it's always good to, speaking of gender equality, it's always good to have representatives of the other gender in this, not always like middle-aged white men like we are. So it's, again, very much something we want to focus more on as well.
Yes. No, I agree with that. So any, how do I correctly put this without us being done for gender equality or anything here, but any non-basic white males that want to join us on the podcast, please let us know. If you've got something of value and relevance to share with our listeners, then let us know. We'll gladly have you on as a guest.
Exactly.
Yes, as long as it's in context of fintech and banking technology. So
hopefully, yes.
Yeah. We don't want to talk about football or anything else.
Even though we want to, but maybe the audience doesn't want to listen.
Although I believe we ended up talking about American football once on an episode because you're a big fan of American football, but that was very early on. But then we ended up at Jyrki.
Yeah.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, we were trying to get that done for almost like a year.
Yes.
We've had some experience before about guests coming from big companies with high-profile backgrounds, and then we have to talk a lot with the teams to get things done. Everything was actually quite smooth with Jyrki. There was never any controversy on what we can't talk about. He was very open about everything, and even the preparation was very smooth. It just took a very long time because again, there's so many people that have to look into the topic before someone like him can come on the podcast, including things like they had to listen to our previous episodes in order to make sure we're not completely insane. So apparently we passed the test, and
we managed to trick him on that one.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So whatever we are doing, I guess it's working because we passed the test, and and again, I mean, we already covered the conversation, and it was my favorite episode of the season. And we of course hope to have not only Jyrki back, but also people of similar in similar roles coming and having a conversation about maybe the same topics that Jyrki was talking about.
Yeah. So next is season 11.
Yeah.
Kicking off in 2025 after we've had a little bit of relax and time with loved ones. Any highlights? Anything you're expecting, predicting, looking forward to?
Well, you and me both know that we're lining up a few very interesting guests already, and I think those. If you listen to this season's episodes, you might find some hints on who those people are.
Yes.
Yeah, again, we're clearly going up in terms of the interest that we have in the market for people to come on the podcast. So it's getting easier and easier for us to get guests.
Yes.
And that is truly paying off next season. We hope. Again, we still haven't recorded, so again, nothing is certain. But I think it's looking really good. We will also continue the Nordic highlights with Janne, and because I think that balances out quite nicely the episodes with the kind of one-to-one conversation or two-to-one conversations, and again looking forward to a very interesting spring and late winter when it comes to fintech news. As we said, there's so much happening in this space. We will never run out of things to talk about.
No, we won't. And there's been new books published by some of our favourite authors, and we'll get them onto the show to talk about their books and everything else. So I think next season's going to be another interesting, good season.
Yeah, indeed.
And we hope you'll stick with us for season 11. I hope you all have a fantastic Christmas. But as a last final word, if people want to send you a Christmas wish, how can they find you, contact you?
You can find both of us at fintechdaydreaming.com, our website, of course. Yeah. The best way to reach us, always through LinkedIn, either through my or Paul's profile or the Fintech Daydreaming page on LinkedIn. We are also on X, we are also on Facebook, but most importantly, we are on YouTube. So again, YouTube is the only place where you can actually enjoy watching this stuff. Even though we have a bit of a homemade studio today, I think it's still fun to see people when they talk. So
actually, a slight correction to that.
We have Spotify as well.
We do have Spotify,
yes.
And Spotify has for some time now been supporting video, and we've been uploading our videos to Spotify. So I think for the last couple of seasons, you can also watch us on Spotify, if you're so inclined to do so.
Yes. I stand corrected.
You do?
Yes. Said the man in orthopedic shoes. So.
Jesus. 3 jokes in one episode. Very good. Okay. With that, I would like to say yet again, Merry Christmas for those of you who celebrate Christmas. For those of you who don't, enjoy the season. Ville and I do celebrate Christmas. We're going to go off and enjoy some time with family and loved ones. We will be back in about a month's time, early January. That's not a month, is it? That's a couple of weeks. So I'll go and work on my maths whilst you rest of you go and celebrate. Until then, until January, until we are back with season 11 in 2025, this has been Fintech Daydreaming.
This is Fintech Daydreaming.